Yesterday I made a video and I asked, have you sold your soul? And not many people would really like to contemplate that because they wouldn't like the answer. Because if we looked deeply enough, then we may be shocked and horrified to discover that in actual fact we have sold our soul. And so if we look at what selling your soul actually is, then we might better be able to understand it. And so one thing that I think you'll be sure of is that there's always somebody which is vying for your energy. Human energy is very, very sought after on this world, and for eternity our energy has always been vied for by conflicting powers. And the powers, several hundred years ago, they sort of were reduced down to, let's say, a couple of forces. And one of them was Christianity and the other one was Islam. And so when we look at the tenets of both of those faiths, one side could very easily see the flaws in the other side. And yet the side that has that belief system can't see any flaws, and can only see the flaws in the other side of the believers. And so when we look at this, we go, well, if any of these religious adherents just stopped to think about what they were doing collectively on both sides, then they would see how fallacious their beliefs were, because they both can't be right, can they? Their individual gods cannot be the only God and the pinnacle God. And so with the Christianity, our Lord and Saviour is Jesus Christ, and everyone gets in a tizzy about that. And then on the other side, it's Allah. Allah is the Supreme Lord and, the Saviour. And so as an outside observer, and I'm sure lots of you are, you don't have too much of an allegiance to Christianity, and most certainly you wouldn't have an allegiance to Islam. But if you look at both of those from the outside, then you can see their flaws, can't you? And it appears to be quite miraculous how those within those two fraternities can't see the flaw in their own belief system. And we wonder how that is, and if we are a little bit versed in hypnosis and propaganda, then we will have some sort of level of understanding as to what's happened. Most of these people have been indoctrinated from a very early age, because we're all programmable matter, and so we've been programmed. And so these people, you could say that they have sold their soul to the devil in one respect, because they have given an allegiance to something other than themselves. And what I'm going to be saying here in this video is, if anybody gives allegiance to anything else outside of themselves, then they have sold their soul to the devil. And so let me see if we can get a little bit closer in explaining that. The Muslims and the Christians think that their souls would be saved by believing in their faiths wholeheartedly, or as much as they can kid themselves or fool themselves. And so they'll never know the true extent of the veracity of their belief until they die, which is kind of unfortunate, because if they die and it doesn't turn out to be true, then they've wasted this sojourn here on planet Earth, and it could have been a whole lot different had they not been constrained and bound by those religious dogmas. And so there's other ways in which we can sell our soul. And so for us who are in the secular world and we don't have an adherence to any religion or dogma, we will be quite sure that we've not sold our soul. No. And those of you who are familiar with the Faust story of Mephistopheles, who I mention quite a lot because it's a very, very important story in relation to human psychology. And so Faust was made a proposition by Mephistopheles, the devil, and it sounded great, and so took it. But ultimately, he'd sold his soul, and then he came to regret that. And so I said to you yesterday that, if you sold your soul, one day you might realise that you have, and then you'll come to regret it. And so how did I speculate that you've sold your soul? Well, we sell our soul in many, many ways, and anytime we have an allegiance to something outside of ourselves, that's when we've sold our soul. And so in what particular instance? Can you give us an instantiation, Aaron? Yes, I can. So let's just say that the state, they have varying ways of enticing you to sell your soul. So one of them, naturally, is religion. And that used to work probably better than it does these days. So these days, religions, the old variety of religion isn't that popular anymore. But there's a new variety of religion, and of course religion, when you look at what religion means, it's just some sort of dogmatic sequence of beliefs that you have an adherence to, and you kind of worship and you follow. And so you could say money is a religion these days. You could say football is a religion. You could say, following idols is a religion. Worshipping, having graven images hanging on your wall of various pop stars and all that sort of thing. It's all a variety of worship, isn't it? And so when we are having a devotion and a desire and a love and any number of other, human attributes, when we're focusing our energy outside, that's when we are selling our soul, because our energy is going somewhere else when we should be conserving it and we should be centering it within ourselves. And why I'm saying this is because, look, when you look at what it is to actually become free, when we enter into a very, very calm and peaceful state of mind and heart, when we don't have an allegiance to anything outside, we are in the present, we are in the now, and we set our ego aside, and we then have a self-realization of that thing which we fundamentally are, which is our spirit. And so that is what we should have an allegiance to. That is what we should be nurturing. And the vast majority of people have no awareness of this, and they don't want to nurture that because they think it's nothing like as exciting as it is worshipping a pop star, movie star, or money. And so they will never look inside because they're too busy being distracted with what's going on in the outside, in the abstract. And so the state, then, they have offered everybody, on one hand, religion, whereby they can keep people bound and controlled in fear. And it's a real cool thing, because the fear isn't being generated by the state per se, it's being generated by the religion. So the state could never be blamed for the terrorising which is going on by religion, because it's all premised on terror. If you don't do this, then you'll go here. If you do this, oh, then you'll go there. And so that's what it's all about. So it's all premised in terror. So religions are terrorist organisations. And but if you have an adherence to like an ideology, like Buddhism, then that isn't premised on terrorism, you know, and it just tells you that you don't need to focus your energy on anything in the exterior. Because if you do, then that'll be fallacious, and you'll never find your deep-rooted centre, the peace and, you know, bliss, which is samadhi, in small increments, but ultimately it's nirvana, when you become absolutely enlightened, I suppose, but that will only come about via death. And so whether that actually happens or not, you know, is anyone else's guess. But you can experience samadhi, and samadhi is, you know, the variety of thing I speak about. I speak about having experiences of pure bliss via DMT or meditation. Some things like that. You can experience a taste of what maybe ultimately we are, or where we're going, and it's kind of like, well, it makes the afterlife more believable if you can have these very, very extraordinary experiences fleetingly, and you intuitively know that that's what you are. It's kind of like pretty appealing and enticing. It's kind of like, okay, well, that's cool to know. And so, but so the state offer you religion, but then the state offer you other religions, don't they? And you know, one of the things they do this, of course, is via money and goods. And so what they've done is, these days, is, of course, they've created, you know, the hire purchase sort of culture. They have created mortgages, and so they say to everybody, look, you can all have a house of your own, and you can have it now, basically. All you've got to do, you've got to abide by our commandments, and our commandments are that, well, you don't steal, and you work hard, and you are not dishonest, and you keep an impeccable reputation, and then you are trustworthy, and then you can enter into our fraternity. And so it's kind of like, you know, very much like religion, isn't it? What they're demanding from us, they're asking us not to covet our neighbour's ox, not to steal, not to murder, and all these sort of things. And when we don't do those things, then we can sign a contract with you know, the money people, the banks, the other religious fraternities, and then they will give us something here and now, because they know how we like things here and now. They know that we're not too keen spending our whole lives on a promise, because that old story is kind of like, it's losing its energy. You know, the energy is fading. People more and more want it now, and so, well, what can we give them now? We can give them a nice car, we can give them a nice house, we can give them holidays, we give them clothes and all different sorts of things, but what do we want from them? Well, we want their allegiance first and foremost. They need to be enslaved to us, and they need to sign this contract, and, you know, it depends what you want, whether it's a car, maybe 4 years, it's a phone, maybe, you know, 1 year, and if it's a mortgage, 25 years. So you sign your soul to Mephistopheles, because you have to comply with their rules and regulations, and what they say is, well, now you effectively belong to us, at least for the duration of the contract. And so if you've got a mortgage, then, you know, what happens is they offer you security. You can offer your family security. You can offer your children security. But you've sold your soul. Why? Because you then have to go to work for the man for the next 25 years to continue with that security. And so your focus then is on your profession, on your job, on chasing money to ensure that you can always pay for this and pay for the bills. And so you've sold your soul, people. And because your focus is always out there, got to go and grab and grab and grab and grab, and you've got to go and slave, and you've got to go and pay all your energy into the machine of the money makers, then you are worshipping a variety of a god, and you are adhering to all of the prerequisites to get what you want. Only, unlike a religion, you don't get it in the afterlife, you get it now. And so isn't that selling your soul? You see, because if we didn't do that, if we didn't need to focus out there, out there, out there, then we could focus in here, and we could just sit for hours and hours on end, and we could feel ourselves, and we can set aside our ego, and then we can see what we really are. We can see what's left when we don't have any worries, we don't have any fears, we don't have any anxieties, we don't have any lusts, we don't have any desires, we don't have any of that stuff. We've settled all that, and we're not interested in that. We've closed it out. We want to see what's inside. We want to see what this has to offer. And those of you that are familiar a little bit with Buddhism, then you know a little bit what I'm speaking about, the value of meditation. But people don't want to do the meditation because the meditation doesn't give them anything now. Whereas if they just sign a contract like this, and they can get whatever they want now, and then when they see something on the TV, a new phone or a new flat screen or a new car, then if they are, as long as they're complying and making all the relevant sacrifices, then they can sign another contract with Mephistopheles, and then they can get that. And so they can have all these different contracts signed with different devils, so to speak. But if you know how emancipating it feels when you don't have any of that. You see, everything I'm speaking about from a position where I know the efficacy of what I'm saying, because I've done it all. I'm long enough in the tooth, and experienced enough to have done all these things, and I know how they feel, and I know how they corrupt us, and I know how, when I had all this stuff, how bound I was, and how frustrated, and how confined, and how threatened. Because when you've got all this stuff, well, there's only one thing ultimately that can happen, is that you're going to lose it. And so you're everlasting polishing the car, cleaning the car, weeding the garden, painting the window frames in your house, fixing the roof, and sorting out the damp, and all these sort of things, aren't you? Because the world is given to entropy, and everything is falling apart all around you. Everything in the exterior is falling apart. It's in a state of decay. But what's not in a state of decay? Your spirit isn't in a state of decay. It can never decay because it's eternal. And so if you get involved with that, and if you concentrate on that, and you discover that that gives you more pleasure, joy, security than any of that stuff out there, then you will know that you have found the center of the universe, which is your spirit, God consciousness, cosmic spirit, and you know that's eternal, and it can never be taken away from you because that's what you are. And so it's kind of like, well, I mean, doesn't that sound a better option? I don't need to sell my soul to anybody. I don't need to sign a contract for my personal enslavement for any time, because I've got everything I need. And once you become settled with that, and once you feel the power of it, and the enormity and the eternity of it, and then you realise, well, I mean, all this stuff that's going on out here, it's all just a ruse. It's all fake, and it will never ever give us anything like the contentment that we will get when we find what we really are, when we just become settled and we don't sell our souls. So what do you think about that, people? Do you think there's any truth in that? Do you think it makes sense? Some of you will be proficient meditators. I mean, hardly anybody mentions to me these days that they meditate and they have a handle on what I'm saying. You know, years ago, I used to do videos about transcendental meditation, and many people came to my channel through those videos because they were seeking out meditation. But now it's kind of like, you know, that's no longer a fad anymore. People are kind of like giving up on meditation, and it's no longer a thing because people, you know, want everything now. And all the people that I've ever spoken about meditation meditation, the vast majority just say they can't do it. Even before they've tried, oh, I couldn't do that. Oh, I've got ADHD. You know, how many people say they've got ADHD these days? How many people, how many of you are seriously threatened by the thought of reading my book, or any book, which is like, you know, more than like 50 pages? Because it just seems too far in the future, and you can't concentrate on the future. You don't want to invest that time, because a book like that may take some people a month, depending on how much time they've got. You know, I've got all the time in the world, and I'm only just over halfway through it, and I'm reading, you know, for an hour or two a day, and it's kind of like, well, it takes a long time. Yeah, I hear you. And so if you've got kids, a partner, and you've got a job, and you've got to paint the windowsills, and you've got to sort the hole out in the roof, and you've got to weed the garden, and you've got to wash the car, and you've got to take the car to buy some new tyres, and oh my God, yeah, you've not got no time to go in here, have you? And so I realise it's not very attractive. And so, you know, that's why the whole world isn't rushing to buy a book like mine, because you've got the impression that it takes an enormous amount of dedication. You have to go on, you know, or through the dark night of the soul to be able to see things in clarity. You have to go on the hero's journey, which is, you know, exceedingly arduous and, you know, terrifying. And then you have to have a lifetime of dedication to meditation, and then you have to let everything go. You don't want a mortgage, you don't want to sign any contracts with any devils. You just want to come back inside, and you're like, well, I've got kids, I've got a house, I can't do that. I simply can't do it. You know, I've got to consider other people. And so, you know, I hear you. And that's why, you know, meditation isn't that popular. Seeking out our inner sanctity isn't that popular. And the thing is, the difficulty is, you see, the people who can keep up with my prolific videos are the ones that have more time. And if you have more time, then it stands to reason that you're not actually working. And if you're not working, then you're not earning. And therefore, £26 or dollars might seem, you know, quite unaffordable. Because, you know, the benefit rate is very low, isn't it? And so that's sort of like a bit of a catch-22, because the people that can keep up with my videos and know what I'm speaking about because they follow a lineage, then they're the ones that, you know, could think about, well, I'd know what he's speaking about in that book, but they're the ones that can't afford it invariably. Whereas people that, you know, have sold their soul to Mephistopheles, and maybe they are super stressed and they are looking for another way, and they come upon my videos and it's like, oh, sounds a little bit interesting, but they watch one video in 10, and there's no lineage, there's no continuity, and from one video to the next they don't really know what I'm talking about. They don't know what's in the book because they've only ever seen one reading, or, you know, 10 minutes of one reading, and so it's all just out of reach, isn't it? And you know, this is the thing with the spiritual path. It's exceedingly difficult to maintain, and it's a lifelong thing, and you have to make an enormous amount of sacrifices. And so what did I sacrifice? Well, I sacrificed the world travel, I sacrificed the big homes and the prestigious cars, and you know, buying anything that I just wanted, just for the sake of it, really. You know, because the more money you've got, of course you buy bigger houses, and then you've got more rooms to fill, and then you have a taste for more expensive stuff, and then you just go doing that, and at the end of the day, all you're doing is buying up meaningless trinkets. You're just filling up your husk of a house with meaningless trinkets, and you look around and you feel quite accomplished, and by the time you've made it all nice, then you've got to dash out the door, and you've got to go to earn the money to continue to pay for it and all those things. So you've got no peace of mind, and I can very easily see, you know, why the world is like it is. And there's so many facets of you know, how to be a human being. If we look at you know, the whole world, and we just look at all the religions, you know, 2,400 apparently, all the different ideologies, and you know, there's a whole myriad of options that we can have and how we can live our lives. And even in secular first world countries, there's still such a pyramidal, you know, hierarchy of how we can live our life, depending on, you know, how much wealth we have. And then when we're on the bottom rung of the ladder, maybe as far as wealth is concerned, then we have to contemplate, well, you know, how are we actually going to manage this thing? Because we could be in our so-called poverty and, you know, be filled with desires and resentment and hate, and because we can't go out and get all these things that they're taunting us with, because we don't have the qualifications or we don't have the know-how, so that will just leave you in a state of disillusionment and frustration and jealousy and envy and all those things. And so some of you may have found a level of resignation and said to yourself, well, I don't want all that fucking shit anyway. You know, by the time you've sat contemplating, you start to get chilled out, and then you've started to feel that there's actually something else and there is some benefit. You see, when people lose their jobs, they hate it and they get all insecure initially, but by the time they've not had their work for a few months maybe, then all of a sudden, you know, they're like, oh, I suppose I'll go and do the gardening, I suppose I'll, you know, go and walk in the woods, or, you know, I'll go and do this and that. And then when they do that, it's kind of like, well, actually this is really cool, it's really soothing, and, you know, it's not something that I ever used to do before. And then you start taking the kids out and you're spending more time with the kids, and it's kind of like, well, it's cool really, because I'm spending more time with the kids and they're really loving it and I'm watching them grow, and it's wonderful. And so it's quite a blessing, you know, losing my job. And so this, you know, whole COVID thing, you know, came about. That gave many people an opportunity to live a different life, to see their worlds from a new perspective. And now you may be aware that many people, they don't want to go back into the work environment. They want to work from home because they realise that they've not got a boss watching them. They can eat and drink whenever they want to, and you know, they can, in actual fact, you know, do the washing up, you know, whilst they're listening for the phone to ring, or, you know, there's all different sorts of things. You can cater for your home environment whilst you're in your own workplace. So it's kind of like, you know, you can manage things much better, and you can put clothes in the washing machine, can't you, whilst you're working on the computer, you know, all these sort of things. So there's a benefit. And if you've got small children, you can manage your children, you can homeschool your children and all that sort of thing. And so, you know, when I'm speaking about have you sold your soul, and hardly anybody has an interest in that video, well, do you have more of an insight into what I'm saying now? Do you grok it a little bit more? Can you see more of a rhyme and reason why I'm saying these things, why I'm suggesting these things? Because I think mostly what people would do, they would just reject it straight away. I've not sold my soul, you know, because you think like selling your soul is by doing, you know, having a compromise in situation, you know, like Mephistopheles with the devil himself. But there is no such thing as the devil. The devil comes in many, many human forms, and there are devils all throughout our societies, and most of them, you know, we know as bankers and as politicians, and you know, the millionaires, which manipulators, they're all devils, people. They're all beguiling us and manipulating us and threatening us in some shape or form. And you see, the whole thing about the banking, you know, it's just, it is the devil in actual fact, isn't it? Because they're luring us in. You can have this, you can have that, look at all these riches you can have. It's like Jesus being compromised by the devil, you know, out in the desert, 40 days and 40 nights. You can have all these riches, I can give them to you. And he says, no, I don't need them. I've got this, I've got this. I've got peace of mind here, and I've got all the wishes I need in here. So I don't need all your fucking trinkets and shit. And so if we thought like that, then If we set up just a little bit of a business to keep the money coming in, or if you're content on state benefit, then maybe you can find your own peace and tranquility once you have cut your suit according to your cloth. You resign yourself that you're not going to have all these wonderful trinkets and everything like that, but you've got the wonderful trinkets of the peace of mind, and you can go walking in nature, and you can observe nature, and you can have a relationship with that. You've got no flat screen TV, but who cares? You can't order pizza 4 nights a week, but you don't want to do that anyway because it's unhealthy. And so there's a lot of benefits for not chasing the paper and not selling your soul, people. And so anyway, I'll wrap this video up here because there's so much to say about it. I can go on and on and on in so many different facets, but you get the picture. You'll assess your situation if you want to, or you just reject it. And that's what religion's all about, isn't it? It's about having a certain dogma, your belief system, and if you hear anything else, then you just reject it. How many people really want to think about other people's opinions? How many people really want to consider other people's religions? Because if you did consider another person's religion when you were religious, then you very quickly, hopefully, come to the conclusion that, what they're doing is exactly the same as what I'm doing. They have a belief system about a certain criteria and dogma, and I have a belief system about a certain criteria and dogma. And albeit the criteria and the dogma are kind of very different and opposing, because we say we've got the only one God, and they say they've got the only one God, but we're doing exactly the same thing. So by the time you are aware of what they're doing and what their religion stands for, you'll ask yourself the question, well, we're just worshipping an idea, aren't we, at the end of the day? And then we're prepared to fight for an idea and kill for an idea and get angry about an idea. It's just an idea. And so some people, they see the light in the darkness of their religions and the containment of them, and then they will come out and they will find their own peace and tranquility, and they will be governed by cosmic laws, natural laws, instead of religion imposed laws. It's tiring.